Mr. President, members of the General Assembly of the United Nations, and all the inhabitants of our land who listen to us. In 2025, 80 years will have passed since the day when 51 countries took the momentous step of creating the United Nations organization. Our country, Chile, has always been a proud part of this collective effort. We were one of the founding countries at that time, and today, almost 80 years later, we continue to defend democracy, peace, multilateralism, and full respect for human rights. The world since 1945 has changed a lot. It must have been complex at that time, full of hopes for the end of the war, but torn by poverty, destruction, and death that left in its wake. Still marked in 1945 by the infamy of colonialism. Already the inexorable emancipations of the peoples from their colonizers were beginning to boil. I repeat again, that a lot of time has passed since then, and the world has changed radically. Imagine if a 20-year-old of that time magically woke up in 2024. Surely he could not believe what he is seeing. The world has changed, but there are things that remain the same. An example repeated from this desk is the UN Security Council, and the world of 2024 is not that of 1945. I listened attentively in the morning to the UN Secretary General, to President Lula of Brazil, to President Biden of the United States, explicitly express his agreement to form the Council in agreement to the times of today. But who or what prevents it? Is there anyone in this assembly who opposes it? From Chile, I propose that we set a deadline for the reform and that when the UN turns 80, we do it with a Security Council according to the course of current times, of which Brazil from Latin America is a part, India is a part, and at least one country in Africa is among others. There is nothing that prevents it except our own lack of will. Institutions depend on the will of their leaders. We and those who are not able to adapt to their times run the risk of collapsing. It is a matter of remembering the rapid collapse of the Council of the Nations. And there are times when change is the best way to ensure the continuity of our history, and this is precisely one of those moments. The same goes with respect to financial governance. We value the efforts that global financial institutions have made to modernize, but above all, from Chile, we support the proposal from Africa, led by Nigeria, to address tax evasion, illicit financial flows, and inequalities in tax collection through the creation of a convention on international tax cooperation, achieving a more transparent and inclusive system, a global tax system that supports the financing of the fight against the climate crisis, in which countries, but also large companies, are accountable for their movements and contribute what corresponds to the countries from which they have obtained their wealth. For these challenges and many more, I have no doubt that it is possible through the leadership of a woman, as indicated in the agreement of the Convention of the Future that we signed this morning, that comes from our great America, according to the criteria of territorial rotation of the UN, that will be able to lead this process following the reformist path of Antonio Guterres. Mr. President of the Assembly of Leaders of the World, on occasions, the international community is accused of double standards in the face of violations of human rights that occur in one part or another of the world. What the adversary does is condemned, but when it is a supposed friend or someone of the same political color, the one who violates the UN Charter is looked the other way, or the ambiguity prevails. From Chile, we rebel against the double standard in terms of human rights. As a young Latin American and leftist president, I say loud and clear that human rights must always be respected everywhere. And we must demand this respect regardless of the political color of the dictator or president in office who violates them. And it is that the young Palestinian murdered in Gaza, the Venezuelan worker forced to migrate, the Ukrainian child from his homeland, the opposition member kidnapped by Russia, the woman silenced in Nicaragua, expelled from school in Afghanistan just for being a woman. They are first and foremost human beings, and the voice of all nations, regardless of their political position, must rise up to defend it. That is the principal position, more beyond any political interest that we defend from Chile. That is why I refuse to choose between terrorism or the massacre and genocidal conduct of Netanyahu's Israel. We do not have to choose between barbarism. I choose humanity. We denounce the illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories and the de facto denial of the existence of an independent Palestinian state by the part of the country occupying. From Chile, we call for a ceasefire in Gaza to put an end to the suffering and the massacre of the Palestinian population that has already claimed more than 40,000 victims. Imagine all the injured, and we also demand, in a clear and unambiguous manner, the immediate release of the hostages that the terrorist group is in power today. Since we have pointed out here that Israel must respect international law, seize the establishment and expansion of illegal settlements in occupied Palestinian territory, and end the massacre in Gaza and the indiscriminate attacks it has been carrying out on the civilian population, and that has been our consistent state policy. We reiterate our insistence on the need to reach a two-state solution with defined, secure, and internationally recognized borders according to the limits of 1967.